Gidget, you know, here's the analogy I have for surfing. When surfing was back in right after the war, or actually even pre-war, World War II, it was just a small little, like a game trail running through the forest. And then after World War II, when there was, people were freed up to be more creative, it became kind of like a one-lane road, you know. The surfing started getting bigger and bigger until Hollywood got a hold of the Gidget, the movie Gidget. And what that did was that film technology presented that spectrum to the whole world of humanity. And that really changed surfing. That made it more like a two-lane highway.
If I didn't have the truth and written down, then my recollection could be hazed.
And this is as easy as it gets.
This is great. I'm so happy you're here. My name is Kathy Kohner, or Kathy Kohner Zuckerman. I've been married for 52 years to Marvin Zuckerman. He'll be coming home any second. I've lived in this house for 50 odd years. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that's really changed for me, I mean, I'm just going to be so honest with you. I have gotten afraid of Pacific Coast Highway. Now, I used to drive to Pacific Coast Highway to the Boo or Malibu because I have my diary pages and I've been reading my diary pages, and I started surfing in 1956. So I've just read all through the year 1956 and I'm halfway through 1957. And it would seem like every other minute I'm going to Malibu, or Mommy and I are going to Malibu. I even had a girlfriend, Tony, that would ride her bicycle from up to Malibu with her daughter on the back seat. Today, I think it's 2017, I'm afraid of driving on Pacific Coast Highway alone. It's changed. I mean, that's my one little failing here. So, you know, Gidget hitchhikes up and down the highway to work at Duke's. Somewhat, you know, I'm not.
So it is 1956. How many people on the beach? How many surfers?
Well, I was 15 in 1956, and so what I do remember is Tube Steak, or Terry Tracy, had a shack at the beach, and the picture of the shack that my dad took probably with my brownie camera sort of become legendary. I don't think there are too many photos of that shack. I have to be truthful, I was not the only girl surfer. There were always girls or women, but I never was aware of the gender issue. I was like never aware that I'm a girl here surfing and there are a lot of young men here. I just thought this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to do what they were doing because my mom and dad, who perpetuated the love of the ocean in me, instilled the love of the ocean, instilled the love of Malibu in me. From the age of like 3, I have a photo of me and my dad and mom at the beach when I was 3. So Malibu was the place to be. Malibu was where my mom and dad met their friends, and I thought it was really boring just sitting on the sand with my mom and dad. So I saw the surfers. Of course, years before, my mother used to take Buzzy Trent and Matt Kivlin in her old Model T, I think it was, car, to the beach, and they'd stick their surfboards in the back of we called it the rumble seat. So I was already aware of the surfers at that time when I was just not surfing, but you know, dilly-dallying and building sandcastles and shoveling to see if I could get to China. So at that time, when I was 8 or 9, Buzzy Trent was surfing at Malibu, Matt Kivlin was surfing at Malibu, Corny Cole and Peter Cole were surfing at Malibu. There was a group before then, the Gidget era group. So the Gidget era group, yes, there were young men at the beach, and it was interesting. Bill, who was my love interest, was 20 and I was 15, and my colleague who's helping me, you know, go over my diary pages says, "Oh, I didn't know they were that much older than you. So there were women in the water. Truth be told, if my memory does not fail me, I was the only teenage girl, maybe 15 or 16, in the water at the time. I never counted how many surfers there were. There was a little group that hung in what we called the pit. So when you walked down to Malibu, there was sort of a steep little incline, and there was some, and I used to think the people in the pit, they're maybe a bit more hardcore surfers than the young men and families. There were families there that sat near Tube Steak Shack at the beach. So I actually wandered up to Tube Steak Shack. Probably didn't feel quite as comfortable sitting in the pit. I wasn't hardcore. I mean, in retrospect, I don't think there was anything hardcore about me. I wanted to learn how to surf because that looked like really fun. And of course, I was attracted to one of the surfers, so that was more an impetus. And then it looked like something that I could do totally on my own, that it wasn't a team sport like tennis. I used to play a lot of tennis. You always needed a partner. You needed an opposition, an opponent. You would get a surfboard and you'd paddle out and you'd be completely on your own. It was up to you. Do you want to, ride the wave on your knees? Did I want to ride it prone? Did I want to stand up? Did I want to try to stand up? So it was really sort of like what was outside, and that's a surfing expression. Sort of the waves were outside. And believe me, I did not venture past First Point at Malibu. So there was, at that time, and I still think there is, First Point, Second Point, and Third Point. And I stayed at First Point, very close in. I just felt very much at home there because it was my place. It was my third place. Like a sociologist would say, everybody has their third place. So I had home at Mommy and Daddy in Brentwood. And then I had school, which was University High School, which I didn't really dig. Excuse the expression, that wasn't an expression at the time. I wasn't jazzed on Uni High. I wasn't jazzed on being a conformist, and what I mean by that, they had something called tri-Y clubs and clubs. I was not a clubby type of person. I was a little bit off dead center because I had found my third place, which was Malibu, and I wanted to surf at Malibu. So I wanted to share with you something about being a girl that surfed at Malibu. However, the kids at University High School, when they wrote in my yearbook annual, when I graduated, they say, "Dear Kathy, good luck with your water skiing." There were only 3 of us or 4 of us at University High School in 1957 and 58 that surfed. So they didn't know what surfing was. Good luck with your water skiing? Hello? I was surfing. I was a surfer. I have the truth of those times because I kept a diary. If I didn't have the diary, I would be having recollections as Mike Doyle has recollections of Gidget, as Mickey Munoz would have recollections of Gidget, as Lucky Cole would have recollections of Gidget. I can't think of a young woman surfer that was there with me at the time. There were young girls that I took to Malibu with me when I got my driver's license at age 16. But there was no other young girl in the water with me surfing that could say, I remember when she was in the water with me. If I didn't have the truth and written down, then my recollection could be hazy, unclear, as others would say. For instance, Mike Doyle, who I love dearly, who sold me my first surfboard for $35, it was the totem pole board, said it was 9 feet long. And I'm like, I don't remember ever having a board that big. First of all, I don't think I could have put it in the back seat of the Buick Dynaflow. But a lot of people are going on recollection. And so when I want the truth, I just open up my diary page and I can say who was at Malibu this day and what the surf was like and why did the gentleman that I really liked disconnect the distributor of my car so I couldn't go home. These are the things that I have written down. And I did surf. Actually, I really did surf. I had swimsuits because I remember writing that I went to Henshey's department store and I bought a suit called Miss California. But I also remember the time when Matt Kivlin's mother, who made bathing suits, I wanted trunks and the top. There was a side of me that wanted to be like them, like the boys. I wore trunks. Now that was not a very, obviously I wasn't aware of my femininity. I was aware of my femininity because I remember stuffing my brassiere with Kleenex. But it's interesting that I wanted at one time Mrs. Kivlin to make me trunks, and those are the pink and black striped ones where Warren Miller has gotten a great photo of me surfing at Malibu.
You described yourself as a little bit off-center.
Well, I would say that surfing was somewhat
Extremely off-center.
off dead center.
So-
It was a culture, it was a sport, and it was a pastime. I'm quoting James Salter in his wonderful novel. So it was a sport, and it was a pastime for me. I mean, I would go to Malibu as often as I could. But I felt that this activity, this sport, surfing, was, and if you want to call it way off dead center, it was certainly not mainstream.
Yeah.
There was no surf music at the time. I listened to Rock Around the Clock, Bill Haley and the Comets. I listened to Elvis, Heartbreak Hotel. Did I know of surf music? Not a clue.
I wasn't so much thinking about surf music, more what I was thinking about was this whole beat generation that was growing up through that. The Kerouacs and all of those guys kind of grew up right through that first part of the 50s and into the late part of the 50s, and that was Miles Davis and just crazy jazz.
That's interesting that you mentioned about the beats, the beatniks. Because when I married my husband, he was a good friend of Larry Lipton's, and Larry Lipton had written The Holy Barbarians, of which we have a copy. And I'd heard that expression, the beatniks. I don't remember if that came prior to 1956, or were the beatniks, when I went away to college to Corvallis, Oregon, I don't remember. There were the beat poets, Ginsberg, but I didn't quite understand when you talk about beatniks now. I know the expression, but I didn't know actually when they came in.
One thing that's been very obvious in this, and talking to people that are involved in the first beginning, Bill Hamilton described surfing as a deer trail in the forest.
Wow.
Until you came along.
He didn't even know me. I'm
No.
Kathy Kohner. People do not know that the character Gidget is loosely based on a girl named Kathy Kohner who lived in Brentwood, whose parents escaped the Nazis. My dad wrote what they call B movies. He was a screenplay writer. Came over in 1938. My parents were part of the emigre generation. My Uncle Paul Kohner helped so many come to this country. And I didn't know Billy Hamilton. And Billy Hamilton said, Gidget started it. Well, I would agree that Gidget the movie with Sandra Dee is the start, and I'm not hesitating, the start of the billion-dollar surf industry. So there was one person that was making surfboards, Dale Velzy, and I think then his friend Hap Jacobs. That's all I remember. But remember, I was insulated. I was the boo. So one day Mickey Dora took me to Rincon, and I was like, oh, the Rincon. And we drove by County Line. And I never, maybe once, drove to the South Bay. But when Freddie Fowler and Alan Gomes and Dewey Weber, and I remembered those people very well, when they came to Malibu, they were called the South Bay Boys. So I was really less traveled. It was the road less traveled. And believe me, I'm still that way today. I'm less traveled. I stick to the vicinity where I feel, and I'm going to quote myself in the movie, very much at peace and very much at home, is at Malibu.
The shortboard revolution really helped get a lot of women in the water because they could handle it. Because those boards were big. I don't know if it was. I don't know if they were 9.2s, but I know there were 9.2s and 9.6s, and I know there were big boards out there, you know, and so that smaller board that more people could get a hold of and carry down and, you know, move down. I mean,
Well, I have to tell you that I left basically the Boo in 1959.
yeah.
You know, the movie came out, and I write how crowded it got. And so when I went away to school in Corvallis, Oregon, I discovered foreign films. I discovered sort of a bigger worldview than what I didn't really capture a lot of knowledge at Uni High. I captured the knowledge of surf terminology and surfing and the lingo that was used, which is great lingo, which I have fun rereading. The surf world left me, or I left the surf world. We would go to the beach when my children were little, but we'd sit up by the colony. There were surf, clubs starting. There were surf contests. There were clothing. There were new magazines, Surfer magazine, and things that didn't exist in my time. I re-entered, and I tried really hard to re-enter the surfing world when seemed to be Craig Stesick. He's sort of the encyclopedic man of surf world. And that was the first time that somebody had ever come. There was one gentleman named John Mazza who's very active with the surf community and has collect boards. When I was working at the Broadway Bar and Grill, as I'm in the restaurant business, he said, "Do you have any old photographs?" So I remember those two being interested in the fact that I was a real person, that I really surfed at Malibu, that Gidget is not just a name that was grabbed from the top hat of somebody's head. And it was a slow immersion back into what is such a great community. And it's really a very small community of surfers that have been there, done that, and love the sport of surfing. And they help create these wonderful surf museums that we have in California, the surf lore, the surf legend, the paddle outs. If somebody dies, there's this great that I never knew about. It's so beautiful. I want that, paddle me out, Mr. Newman. I got then, with the help of Deanne Stillman, who was going to write an article for a magazine. I spoke with her and I just looked at her and I said, wouldn't it be great to get the Gidget novel reissued? And she had an agent in New York, and the original publisher of the original Gidget book, which came out in 1957, we got reissued. And it was then that I decided, you know what? I am Gidget, and I'm going to bring back the memory of my happy longboard days. And I'm going to keep it alive, and I'm going to keep surfing. And I'm going to trust that wave, and I'm going to go for it. And that's why you're here, and I welcome you into my home.
It's really funny, but you were there because you were attracted to surfing.
I was also attracted to the boys. So I got to tell you, I'm still attracted to men. I'm a feminine woman.
What a story.
Thank you.
What a story. I mean,
there was surf.
There was surf.
I really wanted to learn how to surf. I wanted to prove myself. I had a love interest, Bill Jensen, and I really was crazy about Bill Jensen. I read it in my diary pages, if he was there at Malibu, if he wasn't there. And I wanted the young men to see that I could surf. Whether they cared one way or that, but, in retrospect, they will say, yes, she surfed. And I think in retrospect, they're happy about Gidget because it's their memory. It's what they did. And, you don't want any more Tuesdays with Maury type thing. I don't want Tuesdays with Gidget. I don't want to linger and fade away. So when I talk about those gentlemen and those boys at my time, I really bring back happy memories. And I think they like it because they know what I'm doing. I call my talks the Many Happy Longboard Memory Talks. Because, Mickey Dora's not with us anymore, Mickey Chapin. Tubesteak's not with us. Harry Stone Lake's not with us. Harry lived in the shack with Tubesteak. Steve Mateka, a lot of these people that I surfed with are not with us anymore.
Yeah, it's been, it was a fire for me from the first day 3.5 years ago when I got involved in this, that there were people that we were going to lose. And
Absolutely.
And I wanted to make sure, because these are, in the most part, they're men that have dedicated their lives to perfecting this gravity-powered water sled. You know?
Now you haven't lost me.
Yeah, no,
Because even if I go, you've got
I
me.
haven't lost you.
You've got me. Aloha.
Aloha.